All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's just about 2 o'clock, and I am Councillor Lee Hunt, Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Leisure and Sport. We have to run through some housekeeping, which if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery. Everyone in the gallery. By the stairwells, do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the desk should sign out when leaving the building. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Please switch off the microphone when you have finished speaking. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. So we have all read the reports and indeed had a briefing not so long ago. So I just respectfully ask the officers to actually, despite what this says, go over the reports, because people outside have not had the opportunity to understand them if they're watching, but not in great and huge detail, but enough to give the flavour of what it is that the report says. And then highlight anything that might have changed since the publication. And of course, you know, starting at the end of this month, we've got the Olympics on board, which is very much to look forward to, and Portsmouth can hold its head up high with all the innovation around sports and leisure that we see across the city. So do we have any apologies, Mr. Dino?
None, Chair.
None at all. Okay, so we've got Councillor Yinkit Adarin. We'll go round in a minute, and Councillor Emily Strudwick here, but no apologies from Councillor Hannah Brent, I understand. I beg your pardon. It doesn't look like you. I'm so sorry. I am really, really sorry. You look a bit different. I'm so sorry, Hannah. I beg your pardon. Sorry about that. Very sorry. There we are. So, I've done the apologies. Any members got any interest? Starting with you, Councillor Brent. So, we're going to start off with trading stand. Oh, we have to go round now and introduce each other. Starting with Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jane Dodino. I'm the Local Democracy Officer.
David Moorman, Strategic Development Manager for Sports and Leisure.
Edward Skinner, Regulatory Service Lead, but looking after trading standards here today.
Councillor Strudwick.
Councillor Emily Strudwick, Hilsey Ward.
Councillor Yinka Dinero, Charles Dickens Ward.
Councillor Hannah Brent, Drayton and Farlington.
Yes, and it's absolutely fantastic to have the women outnumber the men today, which happens quite often nowadays in Portsmouth City Council, which is really good. So then, Ed, we are going to straight into your report, Trading Standards, Threats, Challenges and Opportunities 24 to 26, pages 5 to 18. If you'd like to fire away, tell us why it's here and what the report does.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillors. This report is an update report from the previous one that was here in September 22. That being said, it's quite long. It's designed to give provide a fairly comprehensive summary of what the next couple of years means for trading standards, the challenges and threats, but it also give a background as to what we do, what we have to do, and what we're doing about trying to solve some of the problems ourselves. So we'll highlight some of the service resources, some recent successes, generally about consumer enforcement, and we'll demonstrate some strategic options to mitigate risk in the future. It's hoped to be a positive report. We will be highlighting some problems throughout. It is a 13-page report, so I appreciate I won't be going through the granular detail. I'll be summarising each section and sort of explaining why it's important. But there are some problems mainly to do with our current FTE count and balancing that against the demands on service that I'll go into. So that's generally the purpose. The recommendations are obviously set out in section 2. And there are 3 of them. I'll just cite them now. Firstly, that the Cabinet Member for Safety in the Community acknowledges the increasing duties and pressures facing Portsmouth Trading Standards, and we'll go into some of those in a minute. Secondly, to acknowledge the level of resourcing currently available to Portsmouth Trading Standards is challenging when providing the protections the public should rightly expect in the consumer protection landscape. And thirdly, and this is hopefully a bit more positive, is to approve the way in which we propose to mitigate some of these growing threats as set out within the report, including the use of alternative enforcement measures. The only reason I've cited that last one is because it's not an exhaustive list that we're going to go through in the report. It is a theme, but some of them are identified that are quite important. So straight into it then, section 3 or paragraph 3 of the report, which is on page 2, just gives a bit of background to trading standards, what it's here to do. It's the scope of its regulatory obligations that are placed on it in terms of being a consumer protection body. There are, at the time of writing, circa 270 pieces of legislation that we have a statutory duty or power to enforce when it comes to consumers purchasing goods or services from businesses. The section explains how we work, so we're intelligence-led, so we respond to complaints or referrals. We're not, strictly speaking, inspection-led. We won't have a programme of work that we follow apart from food, which is probably a bit of a that bucks the trend from that. It explains where we get our intelligence or complaints from. So mainly the Citizen Vice Consumer Service that provide a first-tier level of response for consumers to report their problems with, and we get referrals from them, but also members of the public, businesses, other agencies, etc. They're a growing source of intelligence for us. Importantly, it establishes that we're not a consumer advice service, so sometimes it's quite confusing as to when it's the right time to speak to us. As I said earlier, Citizens Vice Consumer Service are the first tier when you have a problem with purchasing goods or services, and they will route that complaint through to the appropriate trading standards within the appropriate local authority. And then, of course, we'll make the decision whether we can or are able to, we want to investigate it based on our own measures. Moving slightly on to the report, paragraph 4, the demands on service are illustrated here. The headlines are picked from last financial year. So 705 complaints from consumers that are based outside, 705 complaints from Portsmouth-based consumers against other businesses that are sometimes outside of Portsmouth, but maybe within Portsmouth. And the total indicative financial detriment from those complaints totaled 4.1 million. For the same period, the Trading Standards Service received 646 complaints from Portsmouth businesses with about Portsmouth businesses. So that could be about from anyone in the UK, but the business is based in Portsmouth. So that's why there's two measures there. And the total indicative financial detriment in relation to those complaints was 4.6 million. So quite a large number of complaints and quite a large number of financial detriment. It's a slight increase on the previous year, but what's important to take away is that the demand, the gap between the demand and what we're able to look at and do anything meaningful with is growing, which I'll come on to later and hopefully provide some positive solutions. Paragraph 4.4 is important because it speaks about how and why we commit our resources. So it talks about we adopt two models, one an objective model looking at factors like harm, whether the person's vulnerable, the amount of financial detriment involved, whether it's a particularly high-profile statutory duty for us, etc., etc. It also talks about subjective measures where we use our experience to decide whether we're able to make a meaningful intervention in that particular circumstance. All those things factor into why we might be able to take something on. Moving on to paragraph 5, this sets out a little bit about structure. So obviously Portsmouth City Council has its own trading standards service. Every unitary will have one, but when it comes to two-tier local authorities, a bit more complicated. The counties will have them, the boroughs and districts won't so much. It goes into a bit about regional and national structures within the profession as a whole. and what influences they have. So Portsmouth is part of the South East region, and we have a managing company that governs how that region does its business, and to create efficiencies, we share lots of resources, we share lots of experience and skills. We also use that regional company as a model for funneling national funding from other government departments, for instance. So there's lots and lots of benefits to it. Nationally, the National Trading Standards is a platform as well, and they will host teams in other local authorities that have a national influence. So things like the estate agency and letting agency team, which are hosted by, let me just get this right, Bristol City Council and Powys County Council respectively. They will look after some national enforcement priorities in relation to that subject. We obviously feed into those teams on a greater or lesser degree from time to time based on the demands that come to us, but we certainly benefit from them. But it's important really for the readers of that report to understand how local, regional and national structures work together. Okay, moving on, let's make sure I haven't missed anything. Moving on, I'll jump to paragraph 6, I think, sets out some of our performances in the last year. I thought this was worth highlighting because when you hear the capacity of 5.54 FTE, you do wonder what meaningful can we do in terms of successes. And paragraph 6 sets out sort of a bit of a snapshot, summary, again, not granular detail, of what we would have as our caseload in any given moment of time. So it's roughly around 30 criminal investigations, and there's a list of sort of the summaries of where they are there. I think that's quite impressive. I'm quite proud of what we actually achieve, and I think we punch well above our weight when we compare ourselves with perhaps some other agencies and local authorities of similar, or teams of similar size in this field. 3 of those investigations are regionally supported, so we tap into those structures that we just spoke of, which means we borrow resources from other entities or other resource streams, and that's because, perhaps unsurprisingly, some of the criminality or some of the enforcement projects we have to undertake, or cases for want of a better phrase, the implications of them bleed out far outside the jurisdictions of Portsmouth City Council. So a trader that may be based in Portsmouth may be trading across the southeast or much further afield. So we need to tap into those resources where we can. 9 of those investigations, well, actually, there is a slight amendment to, since the time this was written. It's now 8 of those investigations are currently in the court system. We've had one of those conclude recently, which again, I think really demonstrates how much we can actually achieve despite the size of our team. A large proportion of our work is governed by illicit tobacco and vapes work, which may be, again, unsurprising for those that are reading the report or listening to this. That area of work is obviously a really high profile from on a national level, and there's funding that does come through from Department of Health and HMRC and places like that to assist us with that. But we do receive quite a lot of complaints as well, so it's not just governed on that. Section 8, I'm going to jump to section 8 now. So there, just finish off section 6. There are some court results, some summaries of some court results there that you can read. And again, I think they do sort of help to frame the seriousness of some of the matters that we deal with. I mean, there's lots of cases where prison sentences are given large sums of money. There's one there particularly of a 5-year prison sentence that was given recently, and a 10-year criminal behaviour order to a defendant that we had to prosecute, which again sort of really does put it in the realms of some quite serious criminality that we're having to tackle. Paragraph, I'm going to come to paragraph 7 earlier, but we've kind of covered the staffing capacity, so I'll jump to paragraph 8. And now we're starting to talk about sort of the horizon scanning and things that we are considering worthy of bringing to your notice, councillors and chair, as problems that we are identifying, but things we really do have to deal with in one way, shape or form, and how we're going to go about doing it. So the immediate future threats, there's a list of them. They're not exhaustive. On page 6, paragraph 8, all to do with new burdens, new pieces of legislation that are being passed through where we have a statutory duty or power to have a part to play, either wholly or in part. And I won't go through them one by one, but some of them are quite big ticket items. So things like the smoke-free generation, which obviously is gained a big spotlight recently about creating a population for the first time where tobacco is outlawed essentially, and obviously trading standards as the enforcers for that in a retail sense has a big part to play. So,
And just to stop you there very quickly, this tobacco is not always what it seems, isn't that right?
no. So when I talk about tobacco, that's quite a wide topic on itself. So we'll have a regulatory regime around the age-restricted sale element of legitimate tobacco, but a growing part of our work is tackling the supply of what we call illicit tobacco, so counterfeit tobacco or smuggled tobacco that either is legitimate but shouldn't be sold in this country, or stuff that's just completely unbranded and is produced in a completely unregulated environment whatsoever. So, and that is now starting where we're looking at single-use vapes as well. That same model is starting to be replicated as well. So a big portion of our work is not just dealing with hand-rolling tobacco and cigarettes that we traditionally would. We are now dealing more heavily with vapes that are uncompliant or counterfeit or certainly unsafe as well. So it's that's a big policy. There's a few others in there that are worth mentioning. Some of you will be aware of the recent unfortunate issues around funeral directors that took part in certain parts of the country. Obviously, we're being asked to go and inspect funeral directors. Every local authority has been going asked to inspect funeral directors to give assurance that a number of regulatory themes which aren't statutory to us are as we would expect them to be. So that's another ask of us that we're having to sort of find at the moment. We will do it, but it's worth just bringing to your attention. Also, obviously, product safety at our port. We've not long had a BCP, or border control post, should I say, apologies, go live. I think we're 10 weeks in down at the port now. So now we're starting to inspect food and feed goods that come through that border control post. But obviously they're not the only goods that will be coming through there that will require inspection at some point. There's a whole host of goods that require regulatory oversight from a trading standards perspective as well. Currently, there's no resource there to do it, and that's another problem we've got to overcome. Okay, so what are we doing to mitigate these problems? Okay, we'll move on to paragraph 9. Okay, so we touched on this in the previous report, but it has been built on a little bit since, and I am moving to the bottom of page 8. So a lot of these problems are resource-based, so we're looking to improve the competency and skill set within our existing staff establishment, but also look for ingenious ways of increasing that number where we can. So apprentices, not unsurprisingly, is a focus. We have had a member of staff go through a level 4 regulatory compliance officer apprenticeship a year or so ago. It was an 18-month course. That didn't exist at that time. So myself and colleagues in the apprenticeship team, we established that within PCC and put that officer through it. Since then, the profession, in the same way, has sought to solve some of its problems by creating a level 6 standard in trading standards, and where we can, we'll be looking to put the relevant officers at the appropriate time through that qualification as well. That's one way, so we can train our way out of it and look for little gains here and there on that front. Another way is traded services, so generating income. So we've always had, for many years, relationships with certain businesses that trade across regions or across the UK. They're called primary authority partnerships. We have 4 of those at the moment, and essentially we provide advice that other regulators have to respect in other parts of the country on a paid-for cost recovery basis. So I think we generate about £23,000 a year from that. It has reduced somewhat because in not all cases those relationships are designed to last indefinitely. They're designed to solve a problem and improve compliance. But where we lose one, we are trying obviously to replace them with new ones as we go. Another theme is financial investigations. Councillor, your chair, you'll be aware of those. I've spoken to them about them before. They're an absolute important part of any investigation now, is having that financial investigation skill set. And where we can, we sell those services to other local authorities, have had good results, very good results in the past. And obviously where we take our own domestic cases, we can seek some rewards from that as well when we get to court orders at the end of it. Other streams are looking for new grants, and I've been successful recently obtaining a single year, but it will hopefully be a 2-year grant from the Home Office to provide a service, but there are some domestic benefits to our Portsmouth Trading Standards as well, beyond providing the service. It's roughly £150,000 a year to provide an intelligence service to other local authorities. It's hopefully going to go live this month, but I'm very dependent on National Crime Agency, whose IT services we need to be able to deliver that, getting some things across the line on that front. So it's good news. It's another example of us trying to solve our own problems. And obviously, where we can, where we get a new burden put upon us, there is sometimes new burdens funding attached to that. We haven't been particularly successful in the past at getting to that, and obviously I'll be looking forward to working with colleagues as to how we can better capture those in the future, because they do all add up, and they are meaningful to a service of my size when you do aggregate them together. But and they are contained within, I think it's paragraph 8.110. You can see the summary of that. So those are some of the things we're doing. But on a less income based sort of solution, the big ticket item is and it comes back to one of the recommendations, is changing the way in which we look at enforcement and looking for alternative enforcement measures which are over and above or different to the traditional measures that we would have adopted, which would have ended up in a criminal prosecution. So now we're moving on to section 9 of the report, the bottom of section 9 of the report, where we are talking about the fact that we're acknowledging that the criminal justice system is overloaded with cases. So even where we do have a case that requires us to prosecute someone criminally, it's not always in the best interests of anyone else, including the victims or witnesses, to let them hold on for 2 years until we might get to the end of it. So we have to look at cheaper, more efficient means of enforcement that stop the harm in a cheaper, more efficient way. So that's all explored there, and some examples are given. Some examples are given in the way of closure orders. So we'll look at using closure order tools against those that are prolific or persistent offenders for supplying underage age-restricted products or counterfeit products in retail environments. But we'll also look at other civil remedies, such as the one cited there with HMRC. We can refer some things to HMRC to apply sanctions and other forfeiture powers that we'll be looking to obtain in the very near future. The caveat to those, I must reinforce that those won't criminalise the perpetrator, but it will deal with the harm in a more injunctive, immediate fashion that, in some ways, we have to face reality is better for us and better for the victims and those that are being affected by the harm. That really concludes the meat of the report. I just go on to say that there has been an IIA, sort of an integrated impact assessment produced, which respectfully concludes that it's neutral as a result, but it would be remiss of me to say that given the nature of consumer protection and the decisions we take in enforcement, we can't deal with every single case that comes across our desk. We more often do focus on those that affect the more vulnerable in our society, and therefore if any impact on that will ultimately affect those vulnerable groups as well, which may be synonymous in some instances with protected characteristics. So I thought I'd just mention that. But in terms of the report in what we're asking you to approve, Councillor, it is neutral. That sentiment is echoed to a degree in sections 13 and 15, or paragraphs 13 and 15, around the legal implications and service director remarks, and in addition to the consequences of not enforcing statutory duties. And that's all really concludes the meat of the report, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right. Councillors, have you any questions at all? Councillor Strodwick? No. You was about to ask. All right. Councillor Ednarin, go ahead.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. But the only concern, or if you can shed more light, I would say, is in, I think, page 2, local demands on Portsmouth trading standards. You said PTS service received 705 complaints from Portsmouth consumer, and then for the same period, they received another 646 complaints about Portsmouth businesses. The complaints, are they the same thing, or are they related? One, and then two, to me, this is huge. So what is your plan? What are you planning to reduce this complaint? So those are the...
No problem. No, thank you for the question. To answer your first part of the question, the reason there's two sections there, because there'll be complaints that may originate from anywhere in the UK about businesses that are based in Portsmouth. So that would be on our patch, we would have a duty to look at those complaints. But then you could have consumers that are based in Portsmouth that we'd also have a duty of care to an extent, that may be complaining about businesses that are outside of Portsmouth. Okay. So that when you aggregate those together, it is very large. It's you know, over 1,500 complaints in a year, with a total detriment of over 8.7 million, and a capacity of 5.5 staff to sort of look at that. And we look at every single complaint. Every single complaint that comes through isn't necessarily going to be an investigation. Some of it ought to be, it is a purely civil matter, and it may be something that the complainant is very, there's other routes to redress that are available to that consumer, or it might be something that's not within our remit whatsoever. So we can disregard those, but we still get them come through. We still have to read them. We still have to triage them and make a decision and document that decision as to why we might not want to do it. But it is a large number. It is a large number. The more worrying one is later, where I'm talking about the ones, I think since 2022, since the last report, circa 150 complaints which are viable or worthy of our investigation, but we are declining them purely on a capacity basis. That would be something more relevant to focus on, if that helps.
Yes, thank you. So do you, I'm sorry to say this, do you want to say more? What type of complaints, you know, just to have knowledge of what the complaint is all about?
The complaints are going to be about goods or services, but they could span. The trading standards is an enormously diverse landscape, which is very old in some parts. So things around like weights and measures. Like, are you getting what you pay for at the petrol pump? Are you getting what you pay for in the supermarkets? But then it could on the other end of the spectrum, it could be when you go to a garage and get a service for your car, have you been misled? Are you being overpriced? That builder that comes into your house and then wrecks your home because they haven't got the competency to do the work, but they've told you they have. That would be something for us. So you've got a very, very wide spectrum. I'd be very happy to brief you on that wide spectrum, but I would be here all afternoon and take up everyone else's time. I wouldn't be able to speak. So I'd be very happy to speak to you about that.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So another thing, does that complaint, does some of it come from insurance company about misleading?
No, well, it may be misleading, but then again, it's far, far wider. There can be some very kind of strict liability, black and white things that are, you know, it doesn't require someone to mislead someone, because that's something you do with your brain. You know you're telling a lie to someone when you mislead them. But there could be other things that are much more kind of in the regulatory black or white breaches of legislation. So again, I could go in, there's a book on it about that big. I'm very happy to go through it if you're interested.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Frederick? Sorry, I'm not doing very well today.
Not doing
Emily.
well for me today.
I'm so sorry.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah,
That's fine. I forgive you.
so I'm very sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. I just think we should place on record our thanks for the work that you've put into this report and the level of detail, and also for the sort of comfort that hopefully our residents in our city can get from, you know, preventing any sort of scamming, misleading, anything like that. Something I know that has been quite apparent in Bournemouth is the scamming around parking. I don't know if that's just something that could be a potential threat with these QR codes that are coming up on illegal parking. I don't know if we've had any of that in Portsmouth. But I think, you know, when you look at all of these sort of vapes and tobacco, I think it's really reassuring that we are taking action, because, you know, we want to eradicate anything that's detrimental to health in our city.
No, thank you very much for that. I'm not aware of any complaints around that particular QR code scam, which actually finding its way onto petrol forecourts and in parking service environments as well. And it's very quick. If you fall victim of scam, you've made a split decision. You might have been not particularly thinking about what you're doing. You've scanned it, but it's obviously taking you to the fraudster's bank account to pay them rather than what you actually think you're paying for. But no, we are regionally, that's where the regional and national structures do come into their strength, and the regional investigation teams that we'll be able to harness to assist us to do certain things. But luckily, we haven't had anything of those nature in Portsmouth.
Thank you, Councillor Brent. The 30 cases, it slipped my mind. Is that each officer juggling 30 cases, or was that across the team?
No, that would be across the team, and of course it's a difficult metric to really speak to, because no two complaints are the same, no two cases are the same. They maybe have some similar themes, but the facts behind them will be very, very different, varying degrees of complexity. But they will count as one on the ledger, regardless. So, but no, I mean, you can take me out of the investigative remit a little bit, because obviously I'm managing the team, and then of course we have a solicitor that we fund. Obviously we're trying to deal with that as well, and then we have another officer that deals with the primary authority and product safety stuff. So our actual investigative remit, well, our capacity to investigate complaints is far smaller than 5.5.
Sure, but I know that the solicitor is darn good at what she does.
She is exceptional.
Absolutely, they should watch out for her. All right, do we have any comments, members? I think I'd like to echo Councillor Brent's thanks and actually congratulations, because I think it's quite clear that taking into account the enormous reductions that we've seen in local government funding, that you and your team are going out and looking for additional funding to support what you do here. The report makes very clear that you are prioritising some of the worst cases, not all, but some of the worst cases, and that it's intelligence-led, and that by working with the National Crime Agency and other regional and national trading standards groups, that you are maximising the effort on behalf of Portsmouth residents to go after those people who are criminally trading. And clearly, if they do it in Portsmouth, they're facing a highly dedicated and skilled team, and they should be put on notice that they'll end up before a judge and possibly go to prison if they trade criminally in some of the ways that you have described. It's really important for public health too to understand that these illegal vapes and tobacco need to be cracked down upon, because they do so much harm, particularly to young impressionable children who are looking to impress their peer group. And we all see it every day. Young people, far too young, going into these shops and buying these things. So we look forward to some court appearances in that regard in due course. Also, of course, I've been down to see the work of the border crossing post and was there when a French lorry came in and it tried to declare that it didn't have anything in its back, but it had milk powder, a lot of it, and the staff got into action and dealt with it very efficiently. But of course, there are going to be pressures on the finance around that, and we shall see how it turns out at the end of the year, because it's only been ongoing for about 3 months now, so we don't know quite how much that impact will have on council taxpayers, the council taxpayers' purse. And I mention that only because increasingly funding for local government, we have to see if this new government will want to look after local government. Unlike the last one, I'm sorry to say, it didn't much care for local government. We must hope that Labour do care about local government and all the sorts of services that are provided, for example, by your team here today. So I just want to also repeat something that you said, Ed, and that was that Portsmouth punches above its weight. And as I say, all those people who criminally trade now should understand that if we can find them, and we will find them, and we will go after them, and we will take them to court, and let's hope that the court system starts to punish them adequately. And we have this list here, don't we, on starting page 5, going over to page 6, of people who have been caught. And much of it is around tobacco and illegal vapes. And we're seeing guilty pleas, which shows the way that the case has been investigated and the evidence presented to the court, and procuring guilty pleas. That's no mean feat in itself. But 2, all these trials have to be funded, and that sometimes is a very expensive call on the council taxpayers' purse as well, because not all costs are recoverable, are they? Yes, so that is a big problem. And then we see rogue traders overleaf as well. All right then, so again, on behalf of the council, all of us, thank you very much for what you do, and please pass on our thanks to your team and your partners in the region, and whenever you meet them. We do value very much what you do in keeping our city and elsewhere safe. All right, so I agree with the recommendations. Thank you very much for the report. And we go on now to Mr. Moore is going to tell us about how well the city is doing around sports. David.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. So as you said, this is a for information report, just to put on the public record the progress the Council's made in implementing our sports facility strategy, which was written in 2017. And this strategy covers not just the Council's facilities, but also access to other facilities too. For example, schools, universities, colleges, the MOD, and private facilities. So fundamentally, promotion of physical activity is an essential part of the Council's city vision and of our corporate plan. It also contributes to the aims of public health strategies, and it fully aligns with national and regional strategies from Sport England and Energise Me, our local active partner, author of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Physical Activity Strategy. Sport England has fundamentally changed its approach to investment in sports and physical activity due to its recent strategy uniting the movement. It's moved away from capital investment in facilities to a place-based approach. And its placed partnership schemes uses the network of active partnerships to deliver targeted interventions in areas most in need. And this is based on demographics and public health data. And so Portsmouth has an area which has been identified as being in need. That's Landport, or more accurately, the wider Charles Dickens ward, is one of about 90 locations in England to receive some place partnership investment. And Sport England is investing via Energise Me, our local active partner, who are leading on this work. So the City Council delivers its sports facilities via third-party operators, and we have chosen not-for-profit organisations to operate our facilities. These are BH Live and the Andrew Simpson Sailing Foundation. Both are charities whose aim is to increase participation in physical activity. For example, BH Live continues to provide free swimming for the under-12s. But BH Live are not just tasked with operating our facilities. They have a duty to encourage the development of participation in sport and physical activity more widely within the community, and in particularly in the underrepresented groups that the report identifies. But also not only these underrepresented groups, but crucially those who are currently physically inactive. These are people that do less than 30 minutes of exercise a week. Turning briefly then to the council's facilities, we've seen significant investment in line with this strategy since 2017. For example, we are installing energy-saving initiatives at the Mountbatten Centre. We've refreshed the Mountbatten Centre's indoor facilities. We've spent £4 million of investment at the Pyramids, which has transformed and modernised the leisure centre and eliminated the ongoing subsidy. Through match funding from the Football Foundation, the city now has 2 major new football hubs at King George V playing fields and at Moneyfields. The Football Foundation is also investing in non-football facilities via its Play Zones programme, and we've been earmarked for inclusion in that programme. We're looking at improving 6 sites across the city for informal court-based sports. But as I've said, the community provision of sports does not just rely on council's facilities. So again, in line with the strategy, we have agreed community use agreements to enable community use of non-council facilities. For example, at Charter Community Sports Centre, at the Ravelin Centre, the new University of Portsmouth Sports Centre. And we're actively working on further agreements, and we're due to publicise the next one in September this year. Not only that, but our network of community centres provides local facilities for communities to make use of for physical activity, and we have not just halls, but actually specific sports and recreation facilities at Paulsgrove Community Centre, the Omega Centre, John Pounds Community Centre and Fratton Community Centre, and many others. As the great waterfront city, we're blessed with access to the sea and other outdoor swimming opportunities, so we've developed splash pools and are currently renovating Hilsea Lido for outdoor swimming. We also acknowledge the value of informal and non-traditional sports and have supported wheeled sports, for example, through our BMX tracks and through support for the Pitt Street Skate Park and Southsea Skate Park. We maintain a range of facilities for outdoor court sports and have had investment from the Lawn Tennis Association in recent years, and these provide formal and informal opportunities for exercise in our parks and open spaces. We've invested in the golf course at Great Saltons and have improved the quality of the course, and we've seen driven up participation levels there too. And lastly, this strategy recommends replacing ageing facilities, and this is what we are delivering at Bransbury Park with a brand new wet and dry facility to replace Eastney Swimming Pool. Looking forward, we'll need to look at the future of the Pyramids as the building approaches 40 years old. And finally, at the Appendix 1, we provide a list of investment which totals around £20 million over the last 7 years and another 27 million more to come from committed capital schemes. Thank you, Councillor.
Any questions from members?
Sorry, Chair, just a question from me, please excuse my voice. Yesterday I had a photo that was sent to me, and I know the King George development has been sort of well received and welcomed by many avid footballers, young and older. But the first kind of sign was put up yesterday about keeping off marked pitches. It was authorised usage only, and I thought that it was really going to be, you know, anyone could go onto the field. Obviously in the fenced off pitches you have to potentially pay for that. I'm not too sure how it works, but for the actual pitches on the main field, now there seems to be signs saying to keep off them. Is there any reason for this, or?
Mr. Moorman.
Yeah, as you say, the 3G artificial turf pitches are fenced off, and yes, they are chargeable for use. The wider park remains public open space, and my understanding is that the Hampshire FA have undertaken to improve the grass pitches as well. And so I think what's happening is that they've done work on those pitches to improve them, and so it's a request to keep off while the grass is established. That's my understanding. If it is different from that, I will get back to you.
Okay, all right, good answer. All right, members, any comments? No. Again, if I may, ladies, I need to thank you too, because before I've done a number of chairs now, and because I was in culture, leisure and sport way back at the last Olympics, of course, and to see the amount of investment that comes into Portsmouth is actually quite extraordinary compared to so many other places. I mean, you didn't even talk about water sports on the, the European kite sailing, wakeboarding up at Hilsea Lido, the BMX pump track, and you talked about, obviously, our investment with British Swimming at the Mountbatten Centre. And it is interesting, isn't it, that the Sports Lottery now is looking at place and people rather than buildings. But thankfully, this administration at least will continue to do the sorts of things that need to be done, and we won't shirk from improving facilities for people. Sometimes that's quite difficult. Change is always difficult. So when we change from a 100-year-old redundant swimming pool that does nothing for children at all, preferring to go into Bransbury Park, where we're building, which always gets me in this argument, that we're building a proper children's learning pool. And with so many children going in the sea around our coast, you would have thought people would absolutely want to welcome the fact that the City Council is going to be building something that teaches children how to actually swim. I know mums and dads do it. There are other opportunities around the city, for example, now at the university and at Mountbatten Centre. But there are not that many cities, of our size at least, that are able to boast so many facilities, not least the levering in the gymnastics centre at Hilsea, which was about 9 years ago, and we go on to see gymnasts from Portsmouth performing in Europe and winning team gold medals at Team Gym and so on. And we don't mention the boxing clubs either in the report at Charter Academy and all around the city, with young women in particular going on to Europe and winning European medals and finding their ways into the Olympic team into the future too. So this is an incredible amount of investment by the council and indeed partners, the governing bodies, and again in the face of reducing central funding. So it really is hats off to you and everything that you do, working with BH Live and all our other partners to reduce the subsidy, for example, at Pyramids, that was costing £1 million a year now it's washing its face, excuse the pun. So this is all to the good. And the one thing I would remind members here, particularly there are a couple of really quite new ones, is that when we do our budget every year, we ask people what it is they think the priority should be. And always at the top it's social services, education, and housing comes a little bit further down, and sports facilities and culture and leisure always come at the bottom of the list, always right at the bottom. So it is to the credit of the council that even so it's decided that it will have this investment strategy, not least because it improves the outcomes for the people at the top of the list in social services, education, and youth behaviour. So that's why I am always highly and very supportive of sports and leisure in our city. And of course, lastly, to thank Penny Morden, as she's gone on out now, and I'm sure Amanda Martin will take over the support for Hilsea Lido, because we want to get that it's underway, but we want to get that open and moving for all those different reasons. And the last thing I would like to say is that we do this kind of investment equally across the north of the city and the south of the city. And anybody who argues otherwise can look at the fact we've got a tennis centre in the north, a tennis centre in the south, a swimming pool in the south, and we're putting swimming pools in the north. So we do it city-wide. This administration does not see Portsmouth South or Portsmouth North as they're both exactly the same. So again, thank you very much. Ladies, as a result of my going on a bit, did you want to come back or say anything at all? All right. I think that's the end of the meeting then. Thank you all very much indeed for coming along today, and to the officers and to Jane for looking after us. Thank you very much indeed. That's the